So we're going to be using two repositories. The first one, we're going to start with that. That's something that my coworker Holly worked on. So if you can clone down those repositories, especially the first one, I would say, or not even like clone them, just go to them, like just click on the links, or sorry, type in the URL. It's not working. 1 second. Yeah, so this is the first repository. So we're going to follow these steps to set up an iOS project. Obviously, if you already have a native app, you don't have to go through all these steps. But yeah, I'll be following these steps, and in the end, hopefully, we'll be building an app that I'll show you in a second. Yeah, so this is my iPhone. And we're going to be building this app. So it's basically a simple camera app. So you take pictures, and then you can apply filters to the picture. Does that sound good? Yeah? Cool. Cool. So the first thing you want to do is launch Xcode. And then click on File, New, Projects. Just give me a second. Get over. There we go. Is anybody with me so far? Okay, cool. So click on. I might just mirror the display. It's going to be too hard. 1 sec. Cool. So yeah, click on single view application. Click next. Give it a name. So I'm just going to call it this. And then pick a place where you want to store the project. I'm just going to store it in temporary directory. Click create. So now you have an iOS project. Doesn't do anything at this point. So we're just going to follow the steps that are in the PhoneGap WebView iOS. So it says you need a pod file. Is anybody familiar with the CocoaPods? 2 people? 3? 4? Cool. I'm not familiar with them. I just started using them recently. So yeah, so you need CocoaPods, and to install them, you just go to the website. It is somewhere here. Yeah, this website. And if you already have a Mac, all you have to do is use gem install, and gem should be already on your machine. So yeah, once you have CocoaPods installed, you want to use a sample pods file, and I think I already have it, but it's on the GitHub repo, but I think I already have it here.
Make that a little bigger.
Yeah. So yeah, this is like a sample pod file, and we're just gonna change a few things. So our project is called differently, so just rename everything your if. Yeah, just rename your native project with whatever name you give to your project. It's only like in three places. Save that and their pod file. So I should have my project and also like the sample file, which I can delete now, and the pod file. So then it says just run pod install. Any questions so far? Yes.
I just have a basic question. So what's a good use case for doing a native iOS app with WebView and then accessing the plugins?
Right. It depends. Like there are different use cases, but a lot of apps like to use like like a native navigation toolbar with like WebView to show the content. So some of the stuff is static, so it never changes, but the content always changes. So you want to have like a native navigation bar and then a web view. So in that case, you would use a Cordova web view maybe to show that content. And yeah, if it's something that requires like a lot of, I don't know, if you need performance in some cases, like showing lists or tables or something that the web can do but is not really performant, you might want to use a native component and use also web view, along with that. So there's different cases, but it's mostly for performance reasons. Like if you could do it without, like if you could use the web for everything, I think that's a better way of doing it. But in some cases, it just doesn't work. So yeah, so once I have the all my pods installed, just follow the steps. We close the Xcode project, and then we're gonna open the project that CocoaPods created for me, and it's called XC Workspace. So now I have two folders. So there's my project and there's the pods. So if you're familiar with PhoneGap or Cordova, everything about PhoneGap or Cordova is actually in the PhoneGap iOS template right here. So this is your www folder, and this is your config XML. So this is where you define all the plugins and stuff, and this is where all your Cordova/PhoneGap code goes to. And then all these are just plugins. And everything in here is going to be your native project, your native iOS project. So we'll be playing with keep going. So I have the workspace.
Hey, sorry, when you replace in the pod file with your native project, is it the full project name or just the short?
So yeah, I'll show you again.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So you see,
Make that later.
yeah. So this is the project name, and before that it was called your native proj.
Yeah.
So I replaced it with my project's name, and then below that there was your native proj tests. So I just replaced it with my project's name, tests.
Awesome. Thank you.
And same thing for the last part. Cool. So yeah, so I have, like I said, we will be playing with both today. So right now I'm just gonna try to run this, but before I do that, I need to change a little thing here. So I have a storyboard. Anybody familiar with storyboards or iOS development in general? Okay, two people. So it's basically a way to define your UI. So instead of like writing your UI elements in all in code, you can do that with storyboards and like define all the flows between all the screens. We'll only have one screen in this app, so we don't have to worry about flows so much, but we're going to be playing with storyboards to define our UI a little bit. So yeah, if I click on the main.storyboard, and click on this icon here, I want to select the view controller in this hierarchy here. And then, yeah, I want the class to be not this view controller here, but I want it to be CDV view controller, which is basically Cordova view controller, the view controller that's associated with the Cordova web view. So if I do that and run this, just have quick time running, I should be able to see the app that's in here, hopefully. Sweet. And device ready fired. Is everyone with me so far?
Pods for me are taking just forever to load. They've been
okay.
Like 10 minutes, but I'm trying to catch up.
Cool. I'll just keep going then. So now I have a basic iOS native project set up with CocoaPods. Now we can start building our app. So I'm just gonna stop this, and then we're gonna follow the other tutorial. So the other GitHub repo. So not this one, but this one. So yeah, the first step, we need to change the app a little bit. So I'm using the PhoneGap start repository. It's very simple. It's just an app that fires device ready. So we'll be replacing this app with the one from PhoneGap start. So I already have it here somewhere, I think. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to delete 3 files in here. So I'm gonna delete the index. Move to trash and replace it with my index from PhoneGap start. Cool. And then delete the CSS. And replace it with CSS. And finally, the JS. So if I run this again, this is the app that comes with PhoneGap Start. So it just fires device ready, and that's it. So okay, so replace these files. Now we're actually going to play with the storyboards. So this is where we're going to drag on the views that we're going to be using for this app. So there's going to be one view that's going to display the camera preview, and then another button that's going to help us, filter the image, like send, filter requests to the web view. We'll see that later, but it's basically one button and one preview view. So the way I do this is pretty simple. So you select the main.storyboard right here in the native project, and then there's a bunch of views on here. So you select the view. Once you find it, where is it? One sec. There we go. So select view here, and then yeah, drag it to the view itself, just right there. And then we're gonna center it. So this doesn't actually center, we need to add a constraint. So yeah, just click here on horizontally in container and then add a constraint, because otherwise it doesn't really center it. So we have, this is where our camera preview is gonna show up. And we're just gonna add a button below that. Right there. Cool. I call it surprise because this is a surprise filter. You don't know which filter you're gonna get. You just press it and something happens. But you can have like a, I don't know. I never used Instagram, but I'm guessing like they have a list of filters that you can select. But in this case, I just, yeah. Cool. So now that we have that, let's just keep going with the steps. So we're going to be dealing with one view controller in this case. There's this is like the view controller that came with the project when we first created it. So this is like the header file, and this is the M file. I'm sorry if you're not familiar with iOS development. I'm not really familiar either, but I know this much. So these are like the only files, the only native files that we're going to have to deal with. And that's it. Like, we're not going to do anything else. So yeah, I'm just going to copy and paste this, and I'll explain this in a minute, what it actually means. But so yeah, just copy and paste this. So yeah, so this view controller will have three attributes actually. So the first one is the image preview, and it's just a variable that points to that preview image. Image preview. The other one is the button that's gonna apply the filters, and the last one is just a variable that we're gonna need to capture, but it's not actually visible. Yeah, it's not visible, but it's just a variable that I need in now.
You make your text larger.
What?
You make your text larger.
Oh, sure. How do I do that again here? Maybe. Yeah.
Oh, on the left, there's presentation large, and that list of like, not above, just down below, where it's that list of like default, dust, low key, just to the left.
Oh, yeah.
Presentation large.
This is very large.
Goodbye.
Oh, but is this okay? No.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Cool. Cool. Yeah. So two variables that are going to point to the views, and then one variable that's going to help us just capture the image. And then the last one, it's basically a function that gets called whenever you press that button. It's just a callback. So whenever you press the button, this function called capture now is going to get executed, and we're going to capture an image. So that's it for the view controller. That's pretty much what we need. Does that make sense? Yes? Okay. So now we're going to change the view controller of the storyboard back to view controller, because that's the one we're going to be working on. The other thing too that I forgot to mention is that our view controller is also inherits from this Cordova view controller, because we're going to be using Cordova stuff in our view, so that's why I inherit from it, and I don't have to worry about re-implementing everything because Cordova already does it. But you don't have to worry about it. I'm just mentioning it. So go to main.storyboard and then select the view controller here, and then we want to use view controller instead of Cordova view controller, like that. Yeah, so then we're gonna do we're gonna associate. So the way, yeah, so when you create when you drag and drop the views onto the storyboard, you update the UI, but you don't really associate them with those variables that I told you about earlier. So the way we do that is by clicking this icon. It's called the Assistant Editor. Yeah. So click on there, and just gonna make this bigger. And then we're gonna select the file here, the header file. And then what we're gonna do is that we're gonna press Control, and then click, and then drag the view onto the image preview here, and that basically creates the association. So we know that this variable is associated with that view. And we do that for the preview, and we're gonna do that for the button as well. Oops. There we go. So you can see here, they're both associated. Yeah, beat that. And then, so now we're gonna write some code to set up the image preview, or the camera preview, sorry. So we're just gonna add this method here. And what this does is basically as soon as the Cordova web view is loaded, this will get executed. And this basically sets up the camera. Like if you're interested, I can go into details, but it's not that important, really. So we're just gonna copy and paste all of this onto our view controller source file. So this is header. Go back to the source file, and yeah, I'm just gonna replace this.
Andy, sorry, what was the URL for the instance map again?
Yeah, I'll go back to it. So here, do you see it?
Is that time?
Yeah, I am HOTEP. Okay, so like you said, I mean, I don't know if you saw, but I left the two methods that were in here. I left them in there, and then I just added two other ones. So I added the view did appear, and basically it just sets up the camera preview. Yeah, that's about it. That's all it does. And then the capture now is the one that gets executed when you press the button to capture an image. And that's pretty much it for now. So we'll go back all the steps. So yeah, now is the interesting part, because now we're gonna actually create a Cordova plugin that will help us, communicate between our web view and all these native components, because that's the interesting part. So the way I do it is just go to File, New, and then File. Select Cocoa Touch class. Give it a name, so I'm going to give it this name. I'm going to call it my custom camera plugin.
So what is a Cocoa Touch class?
It's basically just like an iOS or macOS, UI, or not a UI, just a class.
It's just a generic.
Yeah, just a generic class. Yeah. So yeah, select the folder where I want my my files to go, and I want them to go in there. So click create. So yeah, it creates one header file and one source file. So they're empty, but we are going to replace the content with this. So this is my header. And this defines two things. The first one is capture now, which is a method that gets executed from JavaScript. So that button that I clicked, the one at the bottom where I pressed it to capture an image, was actually an HTML element. So when that HTML element is pressed, this gets executed, and this will call the camera to capture an image and return it to the web view. That's what's that's what happens when I press that button. The other one happens from native to JavaScript. So when I press the button, the native button, I will inform JavaScript that that native button was pressed, and JavaScript will actually set the filter on the image. So the reason why I have two is because I want to show how to communicate from JavaScript to native and from native to JavaScript, and that's how you do it with with the Cordova plugins. And this is yeah, this is the Cordova plugin. So I define the interface here, the header, and then the implementation is pretty simple as well. Only a few lines. I'm just gonna replace the content with this one. Yeah, so here I just implement, I guess, those two methods. So yeah, so the way I do it is whenever I get a message from JavaScript, so whenever that button is pressed, I'm gonna have a click listener or whatever that's gonna call this plugin, and this plugin will interact with the view controller that I defined earlier. So this one, and ask the the camera to capture an image, and that's what you see here. So this is what where is it? It's right here. So MVC is basically model view control. My view controller, and I'm just asking it to capture the image. So this will actually execute this method right here. So here I'm just like connecting to the camera and getting an image and sending it back.
So the actual image capture is done natively.
Yes.
And the display is done through the Cordova web.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Is it passed as a buffer or?
Yeah, it's passed as hold on. It's passed as it's called NS data. It's like a structure, and then sorry, the image itself, like to HTML, sorry, to the web view is base64. That's what I've been using.
Okay. So that send image to JS, is that something that you wrote, or is that just standard?
That is something that is part of the plugin. So it's right here. Hold on. No, not right there. Sorry. It's a block that I pass. So it's basically a callback. So whenever, because the capturing an image, like when you connect to the camera, it's not synchronous. So whenever it finishes, it executes the block, and the block in this case is whatever I pass in here. And in this case, I'm just returning a result back to JavaScript. So here it creates a plugin results, which basically means like the plugin is done. I've got the image. I'm sending it back to you. So this is what happens. Send plugin results, and yeah, send plugin results basically sends everything up.
And so then on the JavaScript side, I'm assuming it's just an asynchronous call. You're
Yeah.
waiting for the callback, and then you're displaying the image that comes back in the data from the callback.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with PhoneGap, there's always like a success callback and a failure callback. So in this case, it will execute the success callback with the image as a parameter. Cool. So we have that. So now we're gonna do some web stuff. I'm just gonna add a section onto my HTML, into my HTML to display the image, and also a button, and that's the button that's gonna get, that I'm gonna press to capture the image. So just gonna add these to the index.html. About here, let's copy and paste. Then I'm going to create a style sheet for the filters, and the filters has anybody used filters, like image filters?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. It's pretty simple, right? Yeah. Yeah, so just add the link to the CSS that's going to handle the filters, but we're going to write it later. And this is my JavaScript. And I'll explain in a bit what it does, but I'm just going to copy and paste for now. Cool. So on the JavaScript side, it's basically the same thing as on the native side. I have two functions. One is called capture now, and the other one is called surprise. The surprise is basically just takes like a random number and applies that filter. It's basically an array of filters, and I take just a random number and then apply that to the image once I get it, and that's it. And capture now is basically just like any other PhoneGap or Cordova API. So you give it like a win and a fail, like a success and failure callback, and just apply that onto on the plugin. So in this case, the plugin is called My Camera, and the method that I'm executing is called Capture Now, and this will execute the this thing here. It's going to execute this function here, this method here. So back to it. So yeah, so once I get the image back, I'll do like some slight changes to the UI, like I remove some elements to make room for the image to display, and then I just set the source of the image to whatever I get back in base64 right here.
So it's actually not passing back a message. It's you're passing functions to it, and then it calls one of those functions as a callback.
You are passing messages back and forth, but you are executing functions on each side. So from when I call this thing called Cordova exec, it's like a Cordova API method.
Right, and then you're passing win and fail.
Yeah.
Which are functions.
Right, but they're not actually passed onto native. They're just added, like they still stay on the JS side.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, because the native doesn't know what to do with them.
Got it.
But what this means is that once you're done, like execute this or that, like depending on what happens. So yeah, so now I have that. Does this make sense for everybody so far?
My camera?
Yeah, so that you can define whatever you want. Like I can call it, I don't know, Bob. Like it doesn't matter, because in the end, like you're gonna define it in config XML, and that's what's important, because that's what does the mapping between the plugin and you know this stuff, the exec. So yeah, it's not that important. So yeah, so now I have the JS, CSS. Like I said, like it's super easy. I thought it would be more complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. Yeah, if you want to like do grayscale, you just like apply grayscale on it and give it a number. Same thing like blur, all of them. So I just have a bunch of them here, sepia, whatever. So I just have a bunch of them here. I'm just going to copy and paste and create a new file called image.css. So in here, just create a new file. Call it image.css. Where is it? Oh, there we go. And just copy and paste. So this is our CSS, and so the last thing we're going to do is that button that I talked about in the storyboard is not yet linked to anything. Like once I click on it, nothing happens. So I'm just going to go back to the editor, so the assistant editor, and I'm going to select the view controller. And so the way you associate actions to buttons is the same thing as before. So you click, so you press Control and then click and then drag onto the view controller. And in this case, I'm just going to define action and call it surprise me. So this will get executed every time you press that surprise button.
No, wait, why did you have to do the association there and then the association in the other?
So the other file is just to associate the button with a variable right here.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
So it's a binding.
Yeah, exactly. So this will get executed, and in that function method, we'll just, so this is also important, and this is how you get the plugin to execute a function. So whenever you press that button, we want to inform JavaScript that the button's been pressed and it's time to apply a new filter onto the image. So the way we do that is by using this thing, which is part of Cordova View Controller, called plugin objects, and it's basically all the plugins, all the Cordova plugins that were instantiated. And in this case, our plugin is called My Custom Camera Plugin. So you just give it a string, and it will find it. for you, and like it will give you an instance of it. And then once you get an instance of it, all you have to do is like call surprise on it, like call the method that you want to call. Right now I'm getting errors because I need to include it, include the header. And now the error is gone. And last step, this is what you actually talked about earlier. Like you said, why is it called my camera? Because I define it here as my camera, but I can define it as anything. What's important is that whatever is here has to map to something real on the native side. And in this case, it's called my custom camera plugin. So I just copy and paste this onto into my config XML. Just add a new tag here, and yeah, and just try to run this, and that should be it, actually. So yeah, you can see my screen. Take a picture. Right. Okay. So try to press. It's working. As you can see, the surprise button is not centered. Can anybody tell me why it's not centered?
Straight.
Right. So let's go back to Storyboard and click on View the button and add a constraint to it. Try again. Yeah, I can capture also multiple images, like it always sends a new one.
You're not sure. We can't see your phone.
Oh, sorry. There we go. So let's capture a new one. Oh.
And so then every time you click surprise, it's on the saved image that it's doing that.
Yeah,
View filter, right? It doesn't actually change the.
it just yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a CSS thing.
Yeah. So can you get the actual new image, the filtered image back
To
do something with it, to save it, or pure JavaScript? Then
you mean like filter the image and save it?
Yep.
Yeah, you could, but you'd have it's a little bit more involved. But yeah, you can. You can change the image and like save it or like send it to the
So
web.
high level, how would you do that? All in JavaScript? Or
Yeah, you could do it in JavaScript or you could do it in native. In JavaScript, not here, but Tim like wrote, like one of my coworkers wrote a thing where you'd use a canvas and then change the image data in the canvas.
Okay.
So you could do it that way, or you could just like, yeah, that's the best way I think for if you want to do it in JavaScript. So yeah, that's about it. I don't know. Like I thought that maybe you guys would follow along, but I don't know if any of you have followed or nobody.
Not at this speed.
you were pretty fast.
Oh, okay.
The pods were.
So you should be able to do it. Like we've got 45 minutes. Like if you want to go through the steps, it should be more than enough. And if you have any issues, I'm here. And if you have any questions too, I can answer them.
You done a Cordova plugin where it's working with an Android device?
Yes,
Is it relatively the same?
it's
process?
relatively the same. Yes. So
Android pods.
Android what?
Android pods.
Oh, pods.
Oh no, I don't say
Just Android in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty similar. I can show you that too if you want. But so in this case, like if you want to build the same app with Android, it'll be a little bit different, of course. But the plugin concept is the same. You're gonna have well, in the case of Android, it's a Java file. So you'll have like a Java file that will handle all the requests from JavaScript, and then you'll execute the Java code in there. But I can show you. think our docs are pretty good with that. No, maybe not here. Let's use the Cordova docs. Oops.
Nice try.
There we go. Yeah. Yeah, so this part is the same, right? And that's what I did for iOS.
Right.
You get success, error, the service, and the action. So that's in the case of Java, it would be like the class name and then the method on that class.
Okay.
And then the parameters are the same. It could be like strings or, you know, whatever. Yeah, numbers, booleans, whatever. So then, I don't know if they have an example here. Yes, they don't. One sec. Oh yeah, here, Android. Yeah, so in Java, it's actually a little bit different. Like you have an execute method that is like the entry point to your class, and then depending on the action. So for example, like in my example, I had two functions. Like I had two methods. I had surprise and I had the capture now. So in this case, you'll get two strings in here. Like the action will have two strings, and you'll have to check, you know, what the string is, and then apply the method on, after that. So it's basically like a switch statement. So switch case statement. So you have the action, and then depending on what the action is, you can execute that method or that method, and then do like native stuff, like I don't know, instantiate the camera or do whatever. But it's the same principle as iOS plugins. Like you always have to add a reference to config XML. The signature for JavaScript is also the same, so it's always like Cordova exec whatever. The only difference, of course, is like you're writing Java instead of Objective-C, but that's about it. And yeah, and instead of using storyboards, you use either you can create the components, you know, manually with Java, or you can use the editor in what's it called again? Android Studio. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah.
I was just curious. Can you write Cordova plugins using Swift, or is it just it only use Objective-C?
So far, it's just Objective-C. Yeah. Nobody wants to attempt this? All right.
I started down the path of it, but the one part that was missing from the reading part was just installing the Cordova libraries. So
Okay. Do you have the SDK, iOS SDK?
not yet.
Okay, so you would need that, yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can you please come down?
Sure. It did mention initially, then it changed again.
Oh.
So that goes.
These are all.
Take up.
Where do I get the library from? I have that.
Logic is simply
Tutorial, but this is like from 2012. Links are dead.
Yeah.
So we can replace
Did you have the
render?
Okay.
Yeah, when I go to Xcode, like one of the steps is to change the class. They don't have Cordova classes. So I use that.
Right, but did you follow the first step? The first step, so you need to go to
Render versus.
like you have to class install.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did this.
Did you close the project?
I did. But when I came back, this is all of it's in there. You know what I mean? So I did.
Oh, using Swift though.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it is just easy.
So if you have Swift.
Yeah.
Do it. There's a bridge between the two.
Yeah, there is, but in our use case, it's like all the files are in Objective-C, and Yeah.
Okay. I'll try it with this Objective-C project.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yes, yeah, we do it in our app. There's a bridge between it. It's actually harder for Objective-C to call Swift than the other way. Swift makes it even easier, but we're trying to move everything to Swift.
Yes.
It is hard.
Yeah, Swift is water.
So anybody trying to do this or? Cool.
On the foot of the docs, is just trying to see if there's like a string or the device to assign eval on,
Yeah.
pretty much what it looks like. Is that correct?
For the plugins, for the Java plugin, yeah, it's a little bit like that, yeah.
Is that, so you're sending a string call method, right?
We'd say,
Do you have access to anything internally that you can call a JavaScript that has not Cordova present? How does Cordova only call things that inherit?
Yes.
Something that you're inheriting?
No, you can call whatever, yeah. It's not, you mean like on the native side, can you call anything or on the JavaScript side?
Or is it like inherits the Cordova control?
No.
Maybe I'm not following.
Yeah, I don't understand the question, but,
You should have your evening to mention that it's Objective-C.
what?
You should mention that it's Objective-C in your reading.
Oh, yeah,
Because it just says create a project and I just let it default with the Swift.
oh, okay,
You know?
yeah.
I'll try it.
Yeah, I am HOCPP. Yeah.
Where do you call for it?
The bottom, right there, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Is there a call caption?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, I was just wondering if you could call it.
Yeah.
That was not.
it has to be part of the plugin, like it has to be part, yeah. Was there anything that was not clear that you want me to go through? Was like everything cryptic?
Can you go back to your GitHub page to your guide page? Just
The guide?
under the. Okay, it's.
Okay. Mhm.
This run thing, when I saw in your reading there, has this instance stats. Yes, in UI, but it's not actually the process, it's when I go to run it.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So I just removed it.
Yeah, if you remove that, yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is still I'm getting errors. Can I edit this?
You have it twice? Yeah, you have it twice. Oh, it's twice. Yeah, right there. Yeah, keep doing that.
And this method will be.
Yeah. Makes sense.
It should be called from somewhere, right? Oh,
Yeah.
I attach that.
Yeah, you attach it, yeah.
Okay, let's run it.
They're not working.
Well, I ended up cloning your instance.
You got time, as it is, doing that.
Well, yeah, no, like I know.
Library. Okay, so it's good. Cool. Oh, yeah, it's, so if we use it, so can you grab this, can you grab the URL? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, can we just make a post that says, what would it take to do this? For this little field, or with the most components we need that. So this is the so I'm going to swing upstairs and say, it's this one, this row. Should be fine, but. Oh. We need to kind of call there. Yeah. So, send the object to the over. So again. What did happen to you create decisions?
So the more supposed to.
Just that they had a really nice big time picker. That was why I introduced all the conversation is there.
Yeah.
Big time picker.
You might discuss from scratch.
So this is what I used in the current.
So then I'll.
Yeah. Well, in the current app, yeah, that's all I put in the new app. Well, they've got a thing that they use, they've got a whole thing.
Cool. There's that. Once you're in.
Yeah.
Then I'll get you, right?
Yeah.
For me, it is going to be the default view itself.
What's the
Default view.
but did you get the preview to show up? Or
Yes.
Okay. Why is it not here now? Why is the preview not here? I mean,
Oh, which one?
oh, okay.
Could be the one.
Seems like it's, I'll be there in a second.
Ah.
Okay, thank you. Cool. So yeah.
This is what.
Oh, okay. It's
I did find it. Nice. I got it.
So when you drag, yeah, it's,
Set two. Pretty simple. Drag a view to this other view. Size of the view.
it's just yeah. Is it working with Swift?
I hope the project seems to be already complete. That was the only problem.
Okay.
So I didn't pull in
Sweet.
Yeah, it looks successful. I tried it.
Okay.
Also normally.
First step.
Yeah. 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 Thanks. Yeah, I wonder what
Don't do it.
oh, right here.
You can move it, right?
I did it, but now I'm going to
You managed to get it all up. Cool. Still there, sort of.
This is prepackaged. I'm not worried about downloads. I'm just worried about
It's all that cheese. That's all.
jQuery. Like it doesn't hurt me as much as jQuery. This is all because it's almost it's all prepackaged. Yeah. Here's so that's so this is just native. Oh, sorry. So this is just native. All these guys. This is like here's yeah, this is true. But look at this. That's that's why we're gonna.
This button you bind here and say, oh, and there we have given the reference.
Yeah, right here. So this calls the plugin, basically works.
No.
Some buzz I hear about it, people are using it. Yeah, that's what just date time makers. Okay, so here's what it's supposed to be. So are you using this? Yeah, Kindle. That's what Kindle Mobile. So Kindle Mobile. So see. I do think Mobile does everything. So you define an object that makes a header like that, and then you do. It's very dependent on the Kindle Mobile.
Yeah.
It's like the. Yes. Yes. Oh.
Oh, we're gonna go. All right.
So that's not switch to.
Did you uninstall?
So what do we?
Oh, you need to close the Xcode and reopen it.
Because I would like to.
It might mess up the project, so
Similar to.
but it's
Okay.
yeah.
But I have no replacement. Yeah, I think that would be a nightmare to try to mix them. So is it? Well, this is a question. This is
For us.
if multi-scroll. You know, if all we used for multi-scroll was there, they
Usually so. Oh. I just got your CC.
Just I'll stop it. That's it.
He was certified as my own side.
But you see, so
Did you change the logo limit?
If we go,
awesome, cool.
does
Good job.
that mean a line template engine that we have to code to?
the first time I got it, middle of
Mhm. And not this time.
Is that true?
Yes.
So it's actually.
There we go. So. This is weird. See. Oh, there we go.
Category.
Yeah.
That looks way different.
Yeah. Search for.
Yeah. Do it in 10 minutes.
Right on. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Forward. It's actually a hybrid plugin slash app implementation, right?
Yeah.
You use the plugin API to hook up to
Yeah. Totally.
what do
Yeah, right there. Right there. Sorry. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't do any OGPC.
Yeah.
It's
I can understand that.
right. I guess when you have when you make Xcode extra life, it's easy.
Yeah, delete that.
Okay, just remove the default.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I guess that's proof.
There's a few more steps.
So that's where you actually once we get over
Jackson. Yeah.
What's Greek? Okay, now it's Greek light depends.
That's also.
Exactly. Not.
That's Greek. What do they display line numbers in the editor?
Xcode?
It's an Xcode question.
Yeah, it's in the preferences.
So
Something that I had hoped for. But I think to give the illusion have some maybe render for it, right?
Right.
But like individual
So we've got 15 more minutes. We can do the same thing on Android. I'm kidding. But does anybody have questions about Android? Or Android like hybrid developments?
So,
the IDE process.
Yep.
How much more painful is it on Android before Android?
It's changed quite a bit with Android Studio, so
Becomes easier.
yeah.
Still say it's pretty painful, at least from my perspective. Like Gradle syncing stuff can be pretty slow, and
Yeah.
the simulator is really bad.
Yeah.
Those for me are the two big things.
Oh yeah, you don't want to see Xcode, you want.
Use a real
I mean,
device.
Actual device.
Yeah, with an actual device, it's pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard Genymotion is pretty good, but I haven't used it.
That worked really well when I used to have an Android, and then I could just plug in my phone. And then now that I
Yeah.
don't have an Android with me, I like maybe if I'm doing Android development, I'll just pull up the simulator, and then it's like,
Yeah. I can't believe it's still this bad. I mean, it's been 10 years almost.
And then the contract protocol is still the same. It's still send a message across and receive back that message, and then run the appropriate fail or.
The only difference is that there's a single point of entry on Android, whereas on iOS you can have multiple ones. So when you're defining your native code, I was showing it earlier, but on iOS you can have like whatever methods on JavaScript. On Android, it goes through this execute method, and that would, that's what it's going to call whatever message you pass. So there's always like an entry point on Android.
And so then you have to parameterize your method calls.
Yeah. And then it doesn't really matter called on the JS side. Like you can call them whatever. Like the signature can be different. So yeah, but it's very similar. Like you can do, it's the same thing. Anything native you can do with the plugin and interact with it with JavaScript. Yeah.
So I have a question. A typical PhoneGap app has just the one web view for the most part.
Yeah.
With a native one, you threw in one. What are the ramifications of using multiple or different ones?
Oh, you can totally use multiple ones. So the difference is, well, it depends on iOS or Android as well. Like it's a little bit different because views are managed differently on iOS and Android. Like on iOS, you've got activities and fragments and other things, and on Android. On iOS, you've got like views and view controllers. So on iOS, totally you can do multiple web views. Like you can have a tab navigation where you can have one web view, one native view, and another web view, like totally separate web views. And you can make them communicate all together. So
And it's not a problem with
no,
plugins with potentially multiple instances of a plugin instead of one.
I don't believe so. No.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, this process is not very well documented. Like it's better on the PhoneGap website. Like documentation for how to do stuff like this is well documented, but before, I guess last year, there wasn't really a lot out there on how to really play with quote-unquote web views and native components. So this is like just another example, which hopefully will end up in the docs that can help people. Because this approach is really popular nowadays because a lot of people don't want to bet on web too much yet, because they think performance is still an issue and web applications are still laggy and janky and stuff. So you can make them happy by providing like still web content, but with like native components where it makes sense. So yeah, and a lot of apps actually do this. Like a lot of like for example, I don't know if you guys use LinkedIn. It's pretty annoying to use, but yeah, the native LinkedIn app. Yeah, they use an approach like that, an approach similar to this one. So they have like web content for the most part, and then they have native controls.
the funny part about that, I'm not sure, are you sure the new one is using that?
I haven't, I don't use it, but the ones before that was definitely.
I know that for sure too, because they had like I'd be on their app and I get a pop-up that would say, do you want to read this in our native app? Would I be in the native app? So that was pretty funny.
Yeah.
But I'm not totally sure about their new one, if they like release a completely new app.
Yeah. The one that I find really good is Netflix on iOS is 100% JavaScript, which is
The
Netflix,
app?
yeah.
Or
On iOS only, yeah.
It's a hybrid app.
It's
Like
yeah.
a phone app.
It's not PhoneGap, but it's it's similar. Like all the navigation, everything is like all JavaScript. So
Is it HTML and CSS? as well?
HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Not on Android though, just iOS.
Weird.
Yeah.
See, I'm not sure if you ever had a chance to play with around with Apple TV. kit, but it's pretty crazy. Like you can basically you're writing apps using JavaScript.
Yeah.
But Apple created their own like TB markup language.
Okay.
TBML, yeah.
TBML, yeah. Is it any good?
It's pretty quick to get something up and running. Like we did a hackathon and we managed to build like 4 tabs with different features where you click on links and you could do products and stuff.
Have you seen the demo we've done at Adobe with AEM and Apple TV?
Okay, no, I haven't seen it.
Basically, experience managers because the Adobe content system can format your anyway. In JSON, XML, HTML, of course. We had a team that just created a TBML selector for content. So in 40 lines of Swift, they had an Adobe TV app that is reformatting your website but compliant to TBML.
Really?
And because there's no web view in
Yeah.
so for a Netflix-like site, so videos and shows, TV shows and summaries, and just the same content that's delivered in HTML in browser is delivered as TBML in app, and you get your same website working as an Android app.
That's cool.
And that's an Apple
Is that
TV.
something that's online that I can see, or is
I
that
think
just
there's a link somewhere. I can probably find it. There is a YouTube link.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. I'd love to check that out.
And last thing I want to say is that you shouldn't be doing these things because like it's totally against what PhoneGap stands for, which is cross-platform development. This is like completely not cross-platform, so I wouldn't recommend doing this unless you really have to. Like if you have, I don't know, customers that find your app too janky, or like if you have, I don't know, a list that's like too slow, or that's when I would, use something like this. But otherwise, there are definitely ways to make a fast, it won't be as fast as like a native app, but it will be like good enough. Like for most users, if they couldn't tell the difference. So yeah, like if you use Ionic, for example, or tools like that, I think for the most part they're fine. Like you don't need to dig into like all this cryptic shit.
I don't know, I just get into that. Like I first did PhoneGap maybe 5 years ago by now, before Adobe came along.
Yep.
And back then it was like way too clunky to even be like more than just a billboard static key.
Yep.
For that. So then we went native for a few years, and then it's like, oh, there's some things where we actually really want hybrid. So like right now we're going back to a hybrid model.
Yep.
That is a lot of native things and a lot of web view things. And so I guess my only thing is I think you hit it spot on. It's like there's a use case for it. Just know why you're doing it. Like we need some raw power of native and some flexibility in web views.
Yep.
I don't know. That's what I mean.
Yeah, totally. No,
It's
that
not
totally
always
makes sense.
because it's too janky or we don't want to do cross-platforms that we outgrew it and need a little bit of native there.
Yeah.
Here's how you do it in iOS or whatever.
Yeah.
Your website.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just drag and drop create your page website.
Be able to get to it.
Well,
So that's right now.
the app actually runs, but as soon as I started getting into your stuff.
Spitting out HTML then and
Objective-C,
Can't
harder
find that on
both Swift and Objective-C.
this one is not,
same,
it's
but
only
Cordova.
listed on YouTube. It's only top of
I should probably link to
I just was missing.
So you guys are working anything
Yeah,
Instead of the project.
like the JavaScript side of things? Is it all just
I should probably look into like creating the same thing with
This one
Swift.
is Sweet.
Because I don't know, it seems like what this is.
Yeah, where we did
Do you like have any Swift apps?
Spitting out. We have
Yeah, it's Swift apps.
Yeah, we have our apps. We don't do it.
Okay.
So it's a String Center. So render a page.
Right.
I can show you actually the live instance.
We're a mix.
Okay. And you like it?
Sure. Swift's much easier to work with.
That's
Yeah.
something that's running online, so it's kind of Netflix so fast.
No.
And here I have.
Yeah. So we're just about out of time. Any questions? Before I close it? Nope. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.
And then send it back. Now it's rendered as TML. Okay. Okay, that's the one here. So we have column and HTML. And send contents. Just add HTML. So the same thing is rendered. So it actually displays in a browser in a weird way because it's still in XML. Yeah, but it's XML rendered for Apple TV.
So the server side is doing this for you, and you're just doing the server, so you have to like.
Yeah,
put it in.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's it.
That you don't have to change any of it. Just render it differently.
Yeah.
Yes, anybody who has Adobe,
Yes. Experience Manager.
Experience Manager, cool.
It's a stack. It's under the RESTful API. It's called Apache Sling. So you can format your URLs to access the content. And then the file here tell you what's sending you. The node page is just properties and just render it one way or another. So you just define one key and the high level. Yeah. Now it's across and you render as TVM.
That's really cool.
There's a couple of renders.
Yeah. I'm gonna make a note of that experience then.